Mr. Speaker. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the residents of Algonquin, Renfrew, Pembroke for the trust they've placed in me for a ninth time. And it's their hard work and determination to build communities in the Ottawa Valley that inspires me to work just as hard for them. I'd like to also thank His Majesty King Charles III for visiting Canada and delivering the throne speech. One of the first acts of the last Prime Minister was to pull down a portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, so it was encouraging when the member for Nepean invited His Majesty as one of his first acts. It was encouraging right up until the moment the speech was delivered. And we were all reminded that this is just the same old Liberal Party, just dressed up in banker socks. This is the same party that seeks to seize hunting rifles from lawful citizens. It's the same party that promised the world it would expropriate 30% of Canada's developed lands and impose strict new environmental rules across the country. This is the same Liberal Party that has no economic plan other than to tax and spend, then borrow some more. Now, Mr. Speaker, there is one difference between the Trudeau Liberals of 6 months ago and these repainted Liberals today. Whereas the last Liberals had a childish, obstinate mindset that treated any Conservative suggestion as radioactive, these light-fingered Liberals are ready to lift any idea out of our back pocket. Make no mistake, this isn't a complaint. We want the Liberals to copy us. Yet somehow, despite his university experience, this Prime Minister is bad at plagiarism. What I mean is they might steal our policy slogan, but then they twist it into a traditional Liberal policy. Take our policy to remove the GST on new homes, please. The elegance of our policy is the ease of execution. It's easy for home builders to plan. It's easy for CRA to implement. Yet in the hands of the Liberals, the policy gets twisted into something else. You see, the Liberals said words like remove GST and homes and new, but they weren't in the same order. The Liberals promised to remove the GST on sales of new homes to new buyers. Their policy creates uncertainty. Home builders will have to guess how many new homes they will build for the first-time buyers or not. Their policies require the CRA to hire more bureaucrats to make sure the buyer is really buying their first home. Making something more complicated than it needs to be, growing the public service, and having the government pick winners and losers is peak Liberal policy. Mr. Speaker, the speech did not mention the Liberal campaign promise to seize the property of lawful firearms owners within the next 4 months. It was His Majesty's encouragement. It was encouraging. His Majesty did say that the rights of lawful firearms owners would be protected. And as the former Public Safety Minister said last December, Phase 2 of the Great Liberal Gun Grab will involve sending the police to the home of every single licensed firearms owner to conduct searches for newly prohibited firearms. Those two statements are hard to square. Was the omission of the gun grab in the throne speech a quiet acknowledgement by our economist Prime Minister that spending over $1 billion to destroy the privately owned property is a form of investment destruction? We can only guess, since this Prime Minister campaigned on a slogan to eat less and gain weight. My hunch is, despite how wasteful a gun grab would be, the Prime Minister will cave to the pressure from within his cabinet. They'll claim the gun grab is an investment to saving lives. They'll say this at the same time while they divert the police from stopping crime to searching the homes of 2.3 million law-abiding Canadians. They'll say this despite the complete lack of evidence. They'll say that they're saving lives while record numbers of teenagers are being shot. That's because the Liberals will always privilege the fears of their affluent voters over the lives of poor kids. Mr. Speaker, only time will tell if the Liberal plan to make buying homes more complicated will lower prices. Only time will tell if the Liberals will move ahead on their half-decade-old promise to grab up all the guns that look scary. What Canadians do not need time to figure out is that the Liberal promise to implement the 30 by 30 treaty is an epic fantasy tale. While this story is hardly Lord of the Rings, a red dragon does make a cameo appearance. In the throne speech, His Majesty told the story of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Negotiations over this international agreement were led by the communists who control China and the Liberal minister who stood in this House at this temple to liberal democracy and declared himself to be a proud socialist. That a self-declared proud socialist has been elevated to the position of Minister of Canadian Identity should send a chill down the spine of every small L Liberal in the country. Putting a proud socialist and environmental radical in this same room as the communist dragon crushing the people of China should have been a feeding frenzy for the legacy media.
Exactly.
Yet to read any coverage of the treaty in the Liberal-funded media, you think this treaty is a green miracle of international cooperation. Most news reports only mention the treaty's target to conserve 30% of our land and water by 2030. The media and the Liberals don't like to mention the other two targets in the treaty. They only want to talk about the third target. That's understandable. Conserving our natural habitat is widely supported. What Canadians do not support is a government lying to the world in their name. The promise to reach 30% by 2030 was dishonest. Canadians don't have to take my word for this. They can go online and Google Canada's conserved areas. From there, they'll be able to find the government's report on its conservation efforts. Now, they might delete these web pages shortly, but I made sure to download a copy of the report for when they try to memory hold their track record. And here's what the report says. Over the last 10 years of Trudeau Liberal rule, Canada conserved an additional 3.5% of its natural habitat. Now, that's about the same amount that had been conserved under Stephen Harper, meaning over the last 20 years, Canada has conserved about 7.5% of its land. So that brings the total conserved area to around 15%. But that steady progress wasn't flashy enough for the Trudeau Liberals. So despite having no plan to make it a reality, the Liberals committed us to conserving another 15% of Canada's wildlife and lands in 5 years. That pattern of overpromising and under-delivering was typical of the Trudeau Liberals. So it was a bit of a surprise to see the man from Brookfield stand before Canadians and make the exact same promise. Even more surprising was the ridiculous claim the Prime Minister made during his announcement. The man who claimed he writes his own talking points told Canadians that over the last 10 years, the Trudeau Liberals had conserved 15% of Canada's land. He actually said that Trudeau Liberals had taken us from 1% to 15%. Now, I know the Prime Minister has lived much of his life outside Canada, but surely he even knew we had national parks before Trudeau. Conservatives support conserving more of Canada's natural habitat. We just think we should be honest with other countries on what is possible. What my constituents cannot support is the Liberals committing Canada to Target 1 and 2. Target 1 would require massive new environmental regulations to be imposed on every Canadian. Anyone who has lived on property which falls under a conservation authority knows what this will mean. The Prime Minister's slogan, "Build, baby, build," will be taken out quietly and smothered. Nothing will be built. But it is target number 2 that is the real shocker. These Liberals have committed us to restoring 30% of the developed lands to nature. This would mean the same Liberals who want to pave over 400 times the size of Toronto to build windmills and solar farms. That a proud socialist could hold contradictory policies is not surprising. What is surprising is the estimate of what it would cost the taxpayers of Canada to expropriate 30% of developed lands and restore them to their natural state. One estimate of the value of all the property in Canada puts it at $19 trillion. To buy 30% of that would cost almost $6 trillion. That's what I mean by fantastical. The only way this could ever happen would be the Liberals toss property rights overboard, claim the idea of property itself is a colonial legacy, and give Canada a proud socialist identity. Oh dear. Mr. Speaker, this throne speech really does reveal the Trudeau Liberals are alive and well. Let's just hope the new socks they're wearing weren't made in China.